The moment my mother snatched the apple juice box from my 6-year-old son's hands and passed it to my sister's twin daughters, I knew something inside me had finally broken. We were sitting in Romano's family restaurant on a sunny Saturday afternoon in suburban Denver, what should have been a pleasant family lunch, turning into something much darker. "Your son can drink tap water," Patricia said, with that sharp tone she reserved for moments when she wanted to remind everyone who was in charge. Tyler just sat there, his small hands folded in his lap, watching as Emma and Sophie grabbed the juice box like vultures. My father Harold leaned forward with his usual cold smile. "He should learn not everything is for him," he added, as if my child needed a lesson in scarcity at a table full of plenty. Tyler didn't cry or protest. He simply stared down at his empty hands while his cousins giggled over their stolen prize. I felt something shift in my chest, a quiet rage that had been building for months, finally reaching its breaking point. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I only said one word spoken so softly that only our table could hear it. "All right." That single word carried the weight of 8 months of documented abuse, 8 months of watching my son get treated like a second-class citizen in his own family. The juice box incident wasn't some isolated moment of poor judgment. It was the latest installment in a systematic campaign of favoritism that had been destroying my child's self-worth since my divorce from Madison became final last spring. I remembered sitting in that sterile courthouse back in March, listening to my own parents testify against me during the custody hearing. Harold had stood up in his expensive gray suit and told the judge that I was financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable. Patricia had dabbed her eyes with a tissue while explaining how concerned she was about Tyler's well-being in my care. Their testimony helped Madison win primary custody, leaving me with alternate weekends and Wednesday evening dinners. What they hadn't mentioned to the court was how they'd already decided that Tyler didn't deserve the same treatment as Jessica's daughters. Tyler inherited my quiet nature, the kind of gentle soul who preferred building with blocks to competing on soccer fields. Emma and Sophie, on the other hand, had learned early that demanding attention got results. They were 7 years old and already masters of manipulation, knowing exactly how to work their grandmother's emotions and their grandfather's pride. Jessica had trained them well in the art of getting what they wanted. The pattern started small. During Tyler's first weekend visit after the divorce, I'd brought him to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Patricia had prepared individual chocolate pudding cups for dessert, but when we sat down, there were only 3. "Oh dear," she'd said with fake concern. "I must have miscounted. Tyler can share with the girls." I'd watched my son's face fall as Emma declared she was too hungry to share, while Sophie giggled and scraped every last bit from her cup. I'd made a mental note that night, the first entry in what would become a detailed journal of discriminatory incidents. Christmas morning had been particularly brutal. Tyler had received a small package containing a plastic toy car from the dollar store, while Emma and Sophie unwrapped matching tablets, designer clothes, and enough toys to stock a small store. "We had to be practical this year," Harold had explained when he saw my expression. "Money's been tight." The lie was so transparent it was insulting. This was the same man who owned 4 rental properties and had just purchased a new Cadillac Escalade. Jessica encouraged every bit of it. She'd moved back home after her own divorce, turning our childhood bedrooms into a luxury suite for herself and the twins. During family gatherings, I'd watch her whisper instructions to her daughters, coaching them to take toys from Tyler or ask for extra portions when food was served. "Take whatever you want from Tyler, sweeties," she'd said just last month during Tyler's birthday celebration. Yes, you read that correctly. During Tyler's birthday party, my sister was teaching her children to steal from the birthday boy. Patricia had forgotten to buy a cake for Tyler's 6th birthday, but had somehow found time to make elaborate princess-themed cupcakes for the twins 3 days later. When I'd confronted her about the obvious slight, she'd claimed it was just a scheduling mix-up. "You're being too sensitive, George," she'd said, using the same dismissive tone she'd perfected during my childhood. Tyler understands that life isn't always fair. But Tyler did understand in the way that children understand everything adults think they're hiding. I'd found his diary last week while cleaning his room, a small notebook, where he'd been writing letters to God, asking why his grandparents didn't love him as much as his cousins. "Dear God, please make me better, so Grandma Patricia will smile at me like she smiles at Emma and Sophie. I promise I'll be really good and not ask for anything ever again." Reading those words had felt like taking a punch to the stomach. Harold's favoritism came with business lessons attached. He'd lecture Tyler about earning what you get while simultaneously handing the girls $20 bills for cleaning their already spotless rooms. "Winners work for their rewards," he'd tell my son, while the twins counted their unearned cash. Harold had built his real estate empire on the principle that weakness deserved punishment and strength deserved rewards. In his mind, Tyler's gentle nature marked him as genetically inferior. The documentation in my phone contained photos, voice recordings, and detailed notes about every incident. I'd started keeping records after the third or fourth blatant example, realizing that no one would believe how calculated the mistreatment had become. There were timestamps, witness names, and even receipts showing the price differences between gifts. What had started as a protective instinct for my son had evolved into something resembling a legal case file. Now, sitting in Romano's restaurant with Tyler staring at his empty hands, I felt the weight of all those documented moments pressing against my chest. Marcus, our young waiter, had witnessed the juice box incident firsthand. I could see the discomfort in his expression as he refilled water glasses and pretended not to notice the obvious dysfunction playing out at table 12. Other families around us were sharing meals and laughter, creating the kind of warm memories that Tyler deserved but rarely experienced. The twins were already demanding more juice, their voices rising in that particular whine that Jessica never bothered to correct. Tyler continued staring at his lap, probably wondering what he'd done wrong this time. Jessica sat back in her chair with that familiar smirk, satisfied that her daughters had once again claimed victory over their younger cousin. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, feeling its weight like a loaded weapon. 8 months of patience and documentation were about to serve their purpose. My parents thought they knew everything about their eldest son, but they'd severely underestimated my capacity for strategic thinking. The quiet boy they'd always dismissed as weak had grown into a man who understood exactly how to fight back. I unlocked my phone and opened the Notes app that had become Tyler's unlikely salvation. The silence at our table grew heavy as I cleared my throat and began reading in the same calm voice I'd used to say, "All right," just minutes before. March 15th. I began watching Patricia's confident expression start to waver. Tyler's first Sunday dinner after the divorce. Quote, "Tyler can share with the girls because he needs to learn that life isn't always fair." Unquote. Patricia Morrison, grandmother, denying dessert to a 6-year-old child while providing individual servings for his cousins. Harold's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" George, March 22nd. Tyler's 7th family gathering since the custody ruling. Harold Morrison provides $20 bills to Emma and Sophie for cleaning their rooms. Tyler, who actually cleaned the entire garage as requested, receives no payment. Quote, "Winners earn what they get, son. Maybe you'll work harder next time." Unquote. Jessica's smirk disappeared completely. "Are you seriously keeping some kind of weird journal about family dinners?" I continued reading my voice, never rising above conversational level. April 3rd, Easter Sunday. Tyler receives one small chocolate bunny purchased from the clearance rack at Walgreens. Emma and Sophie receive matching Easter baskets containing approximately $150 worth of toys, candy, and clothes. Patricia Morrison's explanation: we had to be practical this year. Note: Harold Morrison purchased a new Cadillac Escalade the following Tuesday for $48,000. The color drained from Patricia's face as she realized the extent of my record-keeping. Around us, other diners were beginning to glance in our direction, sensing tension, but not yet understanding its source. Marcus hovered nearby with the coffee pot, clearly wanting to retreat, but unable to look away from our family's public unraveling. April 27th. Tyler's 6th birthday party. Patricia Morrison, quote, "Oh dear, I forgot to get a cake. Maybe we can sing happy birthday anyway." End quote. 3 days later, elaborate princess-themed cupcakes appear for Emma and Sophie's weekly sleepover. Cost of Tyler's forgotten birthday cake, $0. Cost of princess cupcakes, $43, including receipt photographed and saved. Tyler looked up at me with confusion and something that might have been hope. This was the first time anyone had acknowledged what he'd been experiencing, the first time an adult had noticed that his treatment wasn't normal or acceptable. I scrolled to the next entry, my finger steady despite the rage building in my chest. May 10th, Mother's Day dinner. Tyler creates handmade card for Patricia using construction paper and crayons. Patricia accepts card without comment, places it on kitchen counter. Emma and Sophie present store-bought cards containing $5 Starbucks gift certificates purchased by Jessica. Patricia, quote, "Oh girls, you're so thoughtful. I love you both so much." Tyler's handmade card found in garbage can the following morning. "Now George, you're taking things out of context." Patricia started, but her voice lacked its usual authority. June 2nd. Family barbecue. Tyler asks for hamburger like everyone else. Jessica Morrison, quote to her daughters, "Take whatever you want from Tyler Sweeties. There's plenty for you." Emma and Sophie remove hamburger from Tyler's plate, leaving him with hot dog. Harold Morrison, quote, "He should be grateful for what he gets." Tyler eats hot dog without complaint while watching cousins consume his intended meal. The entries continued, each one more damaging than the last. I had documented Christmas gifts, birthday celebrations, family outings where Tyler was excluded, and countless small moments where kindness was given freely to the twins, but withheld from my son. The pattern was unmistakable when laid out chronologically, a clear case of systematic emotional abuse, disguised as family dynamics. June 15th. Tyler's Little League game. Patricia and Harold attend Emma's dance recital instead, despite Tyler pitching his first complete game. Quote from Patricia via phone call, "Baseball is just a phase. Emma's dancing is real talent." Tyler asks why grandparents didn't come watch him play. George Morrison explains they were busy with something important. Jessica was fidgeting now, her fingers drumming nervously against the table. "This is ridiculous. You're making everything sound worse than it was." July 4th. Independence Day picnic. Tyler brings American flag drawing he made at school. Patricia hangs Emma and Sophie's store-bought decorations prominently on front porch. Tyler's drawing placed inside house where no one will see it. Quote from Harold, "We can't clutter up the porch with every little art project." Note, Tyler spends remainder of picnic sitting alone on back steps. The twins had stopped drinking their stolen juice and were watching the adult conversation with growing anxiety. They'd never seen their grandfather Harold look uncertain, or their grandmother Patricia appeared genuinely distressed. Tyler, meanwhile, was listening to his experiences being validated for the first time in months. August 8th. Tyler's overnight visit. Patricia prepares separate meals, grilled chicken and vegetables for Emma and Sophie peanut butter sandwich for Tyler. Explanation. Tyler is a picky eater anyway. Note, Tyler has never been given opportunity to try grilled chicken at Patricia's house, despite eating it regularly at home. Marcus had abandoned all pretense of working and was now standing frozen 3 feet from our table coffee pot, forgotten in his hand. I could see recognition dawning in his expression as he processed the systematic nature of what I was describing. September 12th. Back to school clothes shopping. Emma and Sophie receive complete new wardrobes, approximately $300 per child. Tyler receives 2 shirts and 1 pair of jeans from discount store. Patricia Morrison, quote, "Children need to learn the value of money." Note, Emma and Sophie express no gratitude and immediately demand additional purchases. October 31st, Halloween costume party. Tyler requests superhero costume like previous year. Told family budget cannot accommodate costume purchase. Emma and Sophie receive matching princess costumes costing $60 each. Tyler wears homemade ghost costume created from bedsheet. Harold Morrison, quote, "Maybe next year Tyler will earn a real costume." I looked up from my phone for the first time since beginning my recitation. Patricia was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, but these weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic from someone watching their carefully constructed world collapse in real time. November 26th. Thanksgiving dinner. Tyler volunteers to help with dishes, spends hour cleaning kitchen. Emma and Sophie watch television, refuse to help with any cleanup. Patricia provides leftover turkey and dessert for Emma and Sophie to take home. Tyler receives nothing. Quote, "The girls have been such good helpers this week." Note, Emma and Sophie have spent entire week at friends' houses. The final entries were the most recent building toward the moment we were currently living. Harold was gripping his water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter in his hand. December 3rd, last weekend's visit. Tyler brings report card showing all A's and B's, receives brief acknowledgement from Patricia. Emma and Sophie bring report cards showing C's and D's, receive $20 rewards and promises of special dinner out. Harold Morrison, quote, "The girls are trying their best. That deserves recognition." Tyler's academic success generates no reward or recognition. I closed the Notes app and placed my phone on the table. This brings us to today, December 9th. Tyler's apple juice box redistributed to cousins because, quote, "Your son can drink tap water." Additional quote from Harold Morrison, "He should learn not everything is for him." Tyler Morrison, age 6, sits in silence while adults discuss his worthiness for basic refreshment. The restaurant felt unnaturally quiet, despite dozens of other conversations happening around us. Our family's dysfunction had created a bubble of tension that seemed to absorb all sound and light. Tyler was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of relief and amazement that someone had been paying attention. I picked up my phone again, but this time I opened a different app. The recording app that had been running since we'd first sat down at this table 30 minutes ago. What I just read to you was my personal documentation. I said finger, hovering over the play button. But I think you should hear today's conversation from a different perspective. Patricia's face went completely white as she realized what was about to happen. "George, you can't possibly have been recording us without permission." Actually, Colorado is a one-party consent state. I replied, pressing play. I only need my own permission to record conversations I'm participating in. The audio was crystal clear. My phone had been positioned perfectly to capture every word spoken at our table. Patricia's voice emerged from the speaker, sharp and cruel, in a way that seemed even worse when played back. "Your son can drink tap water. He needs to understand that not everything is handed to him on a silver platter." Harold's voice followed, dismissive and cold. "He should learn not everything is for him. Maybe some disappointment will toughen him up." Jessica's encouragement to her daughters was caught perfectly. "That's right, girls, you drink that juice. Tyler doesn't mind sharing. Do you, Tyler?" But the most damaging part of the recording was what came next. Tyler's small voice, barely audible but unmistakably heartbroken. "I was really thirsty. Patricia had responded with vicious satisfaction. Then you can drink water like poor children do. Maybe this will teach you not to expect special treatment. The recording continued capturing Harold's lecture about weakness and entitlement, Jessica's coaching of her daughters to take Tyler's breadsticks, and Patricia's comment that Tyler needed to learn his place in the family hierarchy. 3 minutes of audio that painted a portrait of systematic emotional abuse that would horrify any reasonable person. When the recording ended, I looked around our table at faces frozen in various stages of panic and disbelief. That recording has already been automatically uploaded to 3 cloud storage services, I said calmly. Copies have been sent to my attorney, my ex-wife Madison, and David Chen, Jessica's ex-husband. Jessica nearly knocked over her water glass. You sent recordings to David George. You have no idea what you've just done. Actually, I know exactly what I've done. David has been fighting for custody of Emma and Sophie for 6 months. He's been arguing that their mother and grandparents create a toxic environment that damages children's emotional development. This recording, combined with my 8 months of documentation, provides the evidence he needed to prove his case. Harold found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. Those recordings won't hold up in court. They were taken without our knowledge. Colorado law disagrees with you. But more importantly, court proceedings aren't the only place where recordings matter. I've also sent copies to Channel 7 News, The Denver Post, and that family advocacy blogger who has been covering custody cases involving parental alienation. The implications were sinking in around the table like water through a broken dam. Patricia's social standing in her church community, Harold's business reputation, Jessica's own custody case. All of it was about to be exposed to public scrutiny. You see, I continued, I've learned something important about fighting people who have more money and social connections than I do. You don't attack them directly. You document their behavior and let them destroy themselves. Marcus appeared at my shoulder, his face a mixture of professional concern and personal outrage. Sir, is everything all right over here? Some of our other guests have expressed concern about the conversation at this table. Everything is fine, Marcus. We're just having a family discussion about values and consequences. But I appreciate your concern for Tyler's well-being. It's refreshing to encounter an adult who notices when children are being mistreated. I turned back to my family, all of whom were now staring at their phones, as they realized the full scope of what I'd unleashed. The recording you just heard is already making its way through several legal channels. David's attorney filed an emergency motion this morning requesting immediate custody review based on evidence of emotional abuse in Jessica's household. This morning, Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. I've been planning this conversation for weeks. The juice box incident was just the trigger. I was waiting for the final piece of evidence that would demonstrate the ongoing pattern of discriminatory treatment. Tyler deserves better than what this family has given him, and I've spent months building a case to prove it. Patricia was crying now, but these weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone watching their carefully constructed world fall apart in real time. George, please, we can fix this. We can treat Tyler better. You don't need to destroy the entire family over a misunderstanding. 8 months of documented psychological abuse isn't a misunderstanding. It's a choice that each of you made repeatedly despite knowing how much it was hurting a 6-year-old child. Harold tried one last desperate gambit. What do you want? George, money, I can write you a check right now. Full college fund for Tyler, down payment on a house, whatever it takes to resolve this quietly. What I want is for Tyler to grow up knowing that he has value, that he deserves respect, and that adults who claim to love him should actually demonstrate that love through their actions. Your money can't purchase absolution for 8 months of emotional cruelty. Tyler was watching this entire exchange with wide eyes, beginning to understand that something fundamental was changing in his relationship with his extended family. For the first time in months, he wasn't being treated like an unwelcome burden at a family gathering. I stood up from my chair, leaving my phone on the table, as evidence of the conversation we'd just had. The recordings have been submitted to the appropriate authorities. David's emergency custody motion will be heard on Tuesday morning. My own petition for modified custody arrangements will be reviewed on Thursday. Patricia, I suggest you contact an attorney before talking to any reporters. Harold, you might want to review the moral character clauses in your business partnerships. The nuclear option had been deployed. 8 months of patience and documentation were about to reshape our entire family dynamic, and there was no putting that particular genie back into its bottle. As I stood at the table gathering Tyler's jacket, Sandra Williams Romano's restaurant manager approached our table with a concerned expression. She was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and the confident posture of someone used to handling difficult situations. "Excuse me," she said politely, "but I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation. Are you Harold Morrison from Morrison Real Estate Development?" Harold's face, already pale from my revelations, somehow managed to drain of even more color. "Yes, that's me." Sandra's expression shifted from concern to recognition. "I thought so. Your photo was in the Denver Post business section last week regarding some discrimination complaints that have been filed against your company. The timing couldn't have been worse for Harold. His real estate empire, built over 3 decades of aggressive deal-making and strategic partnerships, was currently under investigation by the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies for discriminatory practices in rental housing. 3 separate families had filed complaints alleging that Morrison Real Estate had denied them housing based on racial and economic profiling. "I'm fighting those accusations," Harold said quickly, glancing around to see if other restaurant patrons were listening. "They're completely unfounded." But Sandra wasn't finished. "My cousin applied for one of your rental properties last month. Single mother, excellent credit, stable employment. She was told the property had already been rented, but it's still listed as available on your website." I watched Harold's business reputation crumble in real time as Sandra continued speaking. "What I just witnessed at this table suggests those discrimination complaints might not be unfounded after all. If this is how you treat your own grandson, I can only imagine how you treat potential tenants who don't fit your preferred demographics." Harold's business partner, Robert Sterling, had already been looking for reasons to dissolve their partnership. Sterling wanted to focus on commercial development, while Harold preferred residential properties, but the recent discrimination complaints had created additional tension. A public incident involving emotional abuse of a child would give Sterling all the ammunition he needed to force Harold out of their most lucrative deals. Sandra discreetly removed her phone from her apron pocket. "I hope you don't mind, but I've been recording this conversation for the restaurant's protection. We've had issues with customers claiming they were mistreated by staff, so we document incidents that might result in legal complications." "You recorded us?" Patricia gasped. "Restaurant policy?" Sandra replied smoothly. "Any conversation that involves potential harm to children or public disturbances gets documented. This recording will be available to child services, law enforcement, or court proceedings if requested." Jessica's custody case was now completely compromised. Her ex-husband, David, had been arguing for months that the grandparents' household created an unstable environment for the twins. This incident would provide concrete evidence supporting his claims, especially combined with the professional testimony from Harold's business discrimination cases. I had already contacted 3 local news stations that morning, knowing that family custody stories with prominent business figures often attracted media attention. Channel 7 News had a regular segment about parental rights and child welfare issues. The Denver Post's family advocacy columnist had written extensively about emotional abuse in custody situations. Both outlets would be very interested in a story that combined business ethics with child psychology. Speaking of media attention, I said to Harold, "You might want to check your voicemail. I believe several reporters have been trying to reach you since this morning." Harold fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking as he scrolled through missed calls. 3 messages from Channel 7, 2 from the Denver Post, and 1 from a family advocacy blogger whose articles about custody cases had gained national attention. Patricia's standing in her church community was about to face similar scrutiny. Bethel Community Church took pride in its family values programming and child protection policies. Patricia served on the church board and led the children's ministry volunteer program, learning that she had been systematically mistreating her own grandson would create a scandal that would reverberate through the entire congregation. Reverend Matthews will be particularly interested in today's recordings, I told Patricia, especially considering your recent application to expand the children's ministry budget. The church board tends to take a dim view of leaders who demonstrate patterns of child emotional abuse. Tyler was beginning to understand that the adults around him were experiencing consequences for their behavior toward him. For 8 months, he had internalized their treatment as evidence of his own inadequacy. Now he was watching them face accountability for choices that had nothing to do with his worth as a person. Sandra was still standing beside our table, her management instincts clearly troubled by what she had witnessed. "Sir, I want you to know that your family is welcome at Romano's anytime, but I think it would be best if this particular gathering concluded before it escalates further." Other restaurant patrons were indeed watching our table now, some with obvious concern for Tyler, others with the morbid curiosity that family drama tends to attract. A few people had their phones out, though whether they were recording or simply checking messages was unclear. Harold's 3 major real estate deals were all hanging in the balance of moral character clauses that required partners to maintain public reputations consistent with family-friendly business practices. The Meadowbrook Shopping Center development, the Pine Valley Residential Complex, and the downtown office renovation project all included language allowing partners to dissolve agreements if any party became involved in public scandals that could damage the project's community standing. Those 3 deals represent approximately $12 million in potential profit, I said to Harold, who was still staring at his phone in horror. "I imagine Robert Sterling is already drafting dissolution papers based on this morning's events." Jessica's phone buzzed with an incoming call from David's attorney. The emergency custody motion was already in motion, accelerated by the evidence I'd provided that morning. Emma and Sophie would likely be removed from Jessica's custody within 72 hours, pending a full investigation into the household dynamics. Patricia was frantically texting someone, probably trying to reach her church friends, before news of the incident spread through their social networks. But the recordings I'd shared that morning had already reached several key members of Bethel Community Church's Leadership Council. "Tyler," I said, kneeling down to his eye level, "would you like to go home now?" He nodded solemnly, his small hand reaching for mine with more confidence than I'd seen from him in months. For the first time since the divorce, Tyler was experiencing adults taking his well-being seriously and holding other adults accountable for treating him with respect. Sandra walked us toward the restaurant exit, her expression warm with approval. "You did the right thing," she told me quietly. "That child deserves so much better than what I witnessed today." Behind us, Harold was fielding frantic phone calls from his business associates. Jessica was arguing with David's attorney about visitation schedules. Patricia was sobbing into her napkin while scrolling through text messages from concerned church members. The domino effect had begun, and there was no stopping the cascade of consequences that would reshape our family dynamics forever. As Tyler and I reached the restaurant's front entrance, the glass doors opened to reveal an unexpected figure. Frank Morrison, Tyler's maternal grandfather, and my ex-wife's father. Frank was a distinguished man in his 70s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his career in law enforcement before transitioning to private investigation work. "George," Frank said with a slight nod, then knelt down to Tyler's level. "Hello there, grandson." I was confused by his presence until I realized the terrible irony. "Patricia called you, didn't she? She thought you'd help her control the situation." Frank's expression was grim as he stood back up. "She called me 20 minutes ago crying about how you were having some kind of breakdown and attacking the family. She wanted me to come talk sense into you." He paused, looking back toward our table where the drama was still unfolding. "But I've been sitting in my car in the parking lot for the last 15 minutes, listening to something much more interesting." He pulled out a small digital recorder the kind that private investigators use for documenting evidence. See, Patricia has been calling me regularly since your divorce, usually to complain about your parenting or to share gossip about your personal life. What she didn't know was that I've been recording every single one of those conversations. The implications hit me like a freight train. What exactly has she been telling you? Well, for starters, she admitted that she and Harold deliberately sabotaged your custody case by providing false information to Madison's attorney. They told lies about your financial stability, your living situation, and your relationship with Tyler. They painted you as an unfit father because they wanted to control the narrative around your divorce. Frank's revelation meant that my original custody arrangement had been based on perjured testimony. If Patricia and Harold had lied under oath during the divorce proceedings, it would invalidate the entire custody ruling and open them up to criminal charges for perjury. There's more. Frank continued, his voice growing colder. Patricia bragged about how they were teaching Tyler his place in the family hierarchy. She described the Christmas gift situation in detail, laughing about how Tyler's face looked when he saw what the twins received compared to his dollar store toy. Tyler was listening to this conversation with growing amazement. For months, he had believed that his grandparents' treatment reflected his own inadequacy. Learning that their cruelty was calculated and deliberate was somehow both devastating and liberating. Most damaging of all. Frank said, Patricia admitted that she and Harold have been coaching Jessica on how to manipulate the twins' custody situation. They've been teaching Emma and Sophie to lie about their father David, claiming he's mean to them, when he's actually the most stable adult in their lives. Jessica's custody case wasn't just compromised. It was built on a foundation of manufactured evidence and coached testimony from 7-year-old children. David's attorney would have grounds for criminal charges against all 3 adults involved in the conspiracy. I brought my attorney with me today. Frank continued gesturing toward a man in a dark suit waiting by a silver sedan. Robert Chen specializes in family law and criminal fraud cases. He's been reviewing the recordings while I came inside to assess the situation. The timing was perfect and terrible. Harold's business empire was already under investigation for discrimination. Jessica's custody case was unraveling due to evidence of emotional abuse. Patricia's social standing was about to collapse when her church community learned about her treatment of Tyler. Now they were all facing potential criminal charges for perjury and conspiracy. Frank knelt down to Tyler again, his voice gentle but clear. Tyler, I want you to know that your father is a good man who loves you very much. The way your other grandparents have been treating you is wrong, and we're going to make sure it stops. I felt overwhelming gratitude toward this man who barely knew me, but was willing to fight for his grandson's well-being. Frank, why are you doing this? You could have just stayed out of our family drama. Because Madison called me last night, he replied. She's been feeling guilty about the custody arrangement since she learned how badly Tyler was being treated. She wants to modify the custody agreement in your favor, but she needed evidence that the original ruling was based on false information. This was the revelation I'd been hoping for, but never dared to expect. Madison had witnessed Tyler's declining emotional state during his visits to her house. She'd noticed his increased anxiety, his reluctance to talk about time with his paternal grandparents, and his growing belief that he wasn't worthy of love or attention. She's been documenting the psychological impact on Tyler for the past 2 months. Frank continued. Regression in potty training nightmares, social withdrawal at school. Her pediatrician confirmed that these symptoms are consistent with ongoing emotional trauma. Harold's business license complaints were gaining momentum as word spread through Denver's tight-knit real estate community. Robert Sterling had indeed filed dissolution papers that morning, citing reputational concerns and moral character issues. The Meadowbrook Shopping Center project was already seeking new development partners. Patricia's church community was learning about the situation through an informal network of concerned members who had received my morning calls. Bethel Community Church's Leadership Council was planning an emergency meeting to discuss Patricia's continued involvement in children's ministry programs. Jessica was discovering that her ex-husband, David, had been building his own case for months, documenting every instance where the twins returned home with stories about drinking expensive juice while Tyler was given water, or receiving special treats while their cousin was excluded from family activities. "There's something else," Frank said, his expression growing even more serious. Robert Chen discovered that Harold has been under investigation by the FBI for potential housing discrimination violations. Federal investigators have been monitoring his business practices as part of a larger investigation into systemic discrimination in Denver's rental housing market. A federal investigation meant that Harold's business problems extended far beyond state regulatory issues. The FBI's involvement suggested violations of federal fair housing laws, which carried criminal penalties, including potential prison time. Tyler tugged on my jacket, looking up at me with an expression I hadn't seen in months. Hope. "Daddy, does this mean I don't have to visit Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Harold anymore?" "That's exactly what it means, buddy. You're going to be safe and loved, and you're never going to be treated like that again." Frank's attorney was approaching the restaurant entrance, briefcase in hand, and expression all business. "George Robert Chen would like to speak with you about filing criminal charges for perjury conspiracy and child emotional abuse. He believes we have enough evidence to proceed immediately." Behind us, through the restaurant windows, I could see Harold frantically trying to manage multiple phone calls, while Jessica argued with someone on her own device. Patricia sat alone at the table, staring at her hands, and probably realizing that 20 years of carefully maintained social standing was about to evaporate overnight. "The most important thing," Frank said, putting his hand on Tyler's shoulder, "is that this little boy is going to grow up knowing he's loved and valued. Madison wants to establish a new custody arrangement where you have primary custody and she has supportive visitation. We want to create a real family for Tyler, one where he's treasured instead of tolerated." Tyler smiled for the first time that day, a genuine expression of relief and happiness that reminded me why every moment of the past 8 months had been worth enduring. As we stood in the restaurant lobby discussing legal strategies with Frank's attorney, Marcus appeared beside us with an apologetic expression. "Excuse me, sir, but I need to speak with you about something important." I turned to face the young waiter who had witnessed Tyler's humiliation just an hour earlier. "What can I do for you, Marcus?" "Well, this is a little awkward, but I'm not actually a waiter," Marcus said, glancing around nervously. "I mean, I am working here today, but that's not my regular job. I'm a family court investigator for Jefferson County. I was having lunch with my own family when your situation started unfolding." The revelation hit like a lightning bolt. Marcus wasn't just a random witness to our family's dysfunction. He was a court-appointed professional whose job involved assessing family dynamics and child welfare situations. "I've been a court investigator for 6 years, Marcus continued. "Part of my training involves recognizing signs of emotional abuse and documenting incidents that might require intervention. What I witnessed at your table represents clear evidence of systematic psychological mistreatment of a minor child." Frank's attorney immediately understood the implications. "As a court investigator, your professional observations would carry significant weight in any custody or child welfare proceeding." "Exactly. I'm legally obligated to file a report about what I observed today. The discriminatory treatment, the deliberate withholding of refreshments, the public humiliation of a 6-year-old child, and the adult's dismissive attitudes toward the child's emotional well-being all constitute reportable incidents." Tyler was staring up at Marcus with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Are you a policeman?" "Something like that, buddy. I work for the court system to help make sure children are safe and happy with their families." Marcus's professional report would fast-track every legal proceeding already in motion. His documentation would accelerate George's custody modification, Jessica's custody evaluation, and any potential criminal charges against the grandparents. There's something else, Marcus said, looking directly at me. During my 6 years as a court investigator, I've seen hundreds of family disputes and custody situations. What you did today, documenting months of mistreatment and then confronting it systematically, was exactly the right approach. Most parents either ignore ongoing abuse or react emotionally in ways that actually harm their case. Frank was nodding approvingly. George showed remarkable restraint and strategic thinking. 8 months of evidence collection demonstrates a pattern that can't be dismissed as a single incident or misunderstanding. Marcus's own children, a boy and girl around Tyler's age, had been sitting at a nearby table during our confrontation. They had witnessed the entire incident and were now approaching with their mother, a woman in her 30s, who introduced herself as Sarah. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Sarah said, "but our children were very upset about how that little boy was being treated. They wanted to invite him to share some of our dessert." Tyler looked up at me for permission, and I nodded. For the first time that day, he was being invited to participate in normal childhood interactions with peers who saw him as worthy of friendship and kindness. As Tyler joined Marcus's children at their table sharing chocolate cake and animated conversation, I felt the weight of 8 months lifting from my shoulders. This was what normal looked like: children being included, adults treating kids with respect, families creating positive memories together. My professional report will note that Tyler responded immediately and positively to appropriate treatment from adults and peers, Marcus told me. His social skills and emotional resilience appear intact despite months of psychological stress. Harold's business empire was indeed collapsing in real time. Robert Sterling had officially filed partnership dissolution papers, citing moral character violations and reputational concerns. The 3 major development deals were being restructured without Harold's involvement, representing a financial loss that would be devastating to his retirement plans. Sandra, the restaurant manager, approached our group with a warm smile. "I wanted you to know that your family will always be welcome here. What you did today took tremendous courage, and Tyler deserves to have adults who protect him like that." She handed me a business card for Romano's catering services. "I know this might sound presumptuous, but when you're ready to celebrate Tyler's new custody arrangement, we'd be honored to provide the celebration dinner. No charge. Some victories deserve to be celebrated properly." Patricia's church community was beginning to understand the scope of her behavior. Reverend Matthews had received calls from 3 different congregation members who had heard about the incident. Bethel Community Church's children's ministry would be conducting an immediate review of Patricia's volunteer activities and leadership responsibilities. Jessica's custody case was over before it had really begun. David's emergency motion, supported by Marcus's professional report and Frank's recorded evidence, would result in immediate custody transfer. Emma and Sophie would be living with their father within 72 hours with supervised visitation only for Jessica. "The twins are actually going to benefit from this situation," Frank observed. "David is a stable, loving father who's been prevented from providing proper care because of Jessica's manipulation and the grandparents' enabling. They'll have a chance to develop healthy relationships with adults who set appropriate boundaries." Tyler returned to our group with chocolate on his face and excitement in his voice. "Daddy Marcus's kids want to know if I can come to their house for a playdate sometime." "We'd love to have Tyler over," Sarah added. "Marcus and I believe strongly in supporting families who are going through difficult transitions. Your son seems like a wonderful child who just needs more positive adult influence in his life." The news crews I'd contacted that morning were beginning to arrive in the restaurant parking lot. Channel 7's family advocacy reporter was setting up equipment, while the Denver Post's photographer prepared for interviews. Harold's business scandal combined with the family dysfunction angle had created exactly the kind of story that captured public attention. "Are you prepared for media attention?" Frank's attorney asked me. "I've been preparing for this day for 8 months, I replied. "Tyler deserves to have his story heard, and other children in similar situations need to see that adults can and should fight for their well-being." Marcus's professional report would be filed within 24 hours, triggering immediate investigations by Child Protective Services, family court, and potentially criminal prosecutors. The systematic nature of the documented abuse combined with evidence of perjury in previous court proceedings created multiple avenues for legal accountability. Tyler was laughing with his new friends, his earlier trauma temporarily forgotten, in the joy of being included and valued by peers. This was the childhood he deserved: spontaneous friendships, shared desserts adults who noticed his feelings and responded with kindness. The most important outcome. Frank said, watching Tyler interact naturally with other children, is that this boy is going to grow up knowing that he matters, that he deserves respect, and that people who love him will fight for his well-being. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Tyler ran back to our group with a drawing that Marcus's children had helped him create. It was a picture of a family sitting around a dinner table, everyone smiling, everyone included, everyone holding hands. "This is what our family is going to look like," Tyler announced proudly. And for the first time in 8 months, I believed him. 6 months later, on a warm Saturday afternoon in June, Tyler and I sat at our regular table at Romano's restaurant, celebrating the completion of what had become known in family court circles as the Morrison case. The legal proceedings that began with a stolen juice box had reshaped not only our family, but had created precedents for how courts handle systematic emotional abuse in custody situations. Tyler was coloring a picture of a baseball diamond while waiting for his lunch, chattering excitedly about his upcoming Little League playoffs. His transformation over the past 6 months had been remarkable to witness. The quiet, withdrawn child who had sat silently while adults discussed his worthiness for basic refreshments had evolved into a confident, expressive boy who understood his own value. "Daddy Marcus said he might be able to come to my game next week," Tyler said, not looking up from his careful coloring. "His kids want to cheer for our team." Marcus had indeed become an unexpected family friend. His professional report had been instrumental in expediting every legal proceeding. But more importantly, his children had provided Tyler with his first genuine peer friendships in months. Sarah had become something of a mentor to me, offering guidance on single parenting and helping Tyler adjust to his new living situation. The legal outcomes had exceeded even Frank's optimistic projections. My custody modification had been approved within 2 weeks, granting me primary physical custody, with Madison receiving alternate weekend visitation. More significantly, Patricia and Harold's visitation rights had been terminated entirely, pending completion of court-ordered family therapy and anger management programs. Harold's business empire had collapsed completely. The FBI investigation had uncovered systematic violations of federal fair housing laws, resulting in criminal charges and a plea agreement that included significant financial penalties and permanent prohibition from real estate development activities. Robert Sterling had successfully dissolved their partnership and restructured all 3 major projects without Harold's involvement. Jessica had lost custody of Emma and Sophie permanently. David's emergency motion, supported by overwhelming evidence of manipulation and emotional abuse, had resulted in full custody transfer with supervised visitation only. The twins were thriving in their father's stable household, no longer being coached to lie about family dynamics or compete with their cousin for adult attention. Patricia's fall from social grace had been swift and comprehensive. Bethel Community Church had removed her from all leadership positions and children's ministry responsibilities. Her longtime friends had gradually distanced themselves as details of Tyler's treatment became public knowledge. She had entered intensive therapy, but had made only minimal progress toward acknowledging the harm she had caused. "Frank is coming to dinner tomorrow night," Tyler announced, adding green grass around his baseball diamond drawing. "He's bringing Madison, too. She wants to see my new room." The most surprising development had been Madison's complete reversal regarding our custody arrangement. Learning about Tyler's systematic mistreatment had horrified her, but discovering that her own parents had provided false testimony during our divorce proceedings had motivated her to take active steps toward healing our fractured co-parenting relationship. Madison's relationship with her parents had become strained when she learned about their recorded conversations with Patricia. Frank had been equally appalled by his daughter's willingness to accept perjured testimony that damaged Tyler's relationship with his father. Their family therapy sessions had been productive, but emotionally challenging. Madison wants to establish equal custody. I told Tyler, which means you'd spend the same amount of time with both of us. How do you feel about that? Tyler considered the question seriously, his crayon hovering over the paper. I think that sounds fair. Madison is nicer to me now, and she doesn't let anyone take my juice boxes. Sandra approached our table with Tyler's favorite grilled cheese sandwich and my usual salad. Over the past 6 months, she had become something of a surrogate grandmother figure, always remembering Tyler's preferences and asking about his school activities. How's the little baseball star doing today? She asked, ruffling Tyler's hair affectionately. I'm batting 312, Tyler announced proudly. That's really good for someone my age. Sandra had been true to her word about celebrating our legal victories. She had provided catering for Tyler's 7th birthday party, Madison's reconciliation dinner, and the celebration meal after my custody modification was finalized. Romano's had become our unofficial family headquarters, a place where Tyler felt safe and valued. The media attention from our story had generated unexpected positive outcomes for other families. Channel 7 News had created a recurring segment about emotional abuse in family court situations. The Denver Post's family advocacy columnist had used our case to highlight gaps in child protection services. Most importantly, 3 other families had contacted my attorney with similar situations, involving systematic discrimination against children during custody disputes. There's something I want to show you, Tyler said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. It was a letter he had written at school during a creative writing assignment about heroes. My daddy is my hero because he protected me when other grown-ups were being mean to me. He wrote down all the bad things that happened so people would believe him. He didn't yell or get angry. He just made sure everyone knew the truth. Now I live with him most of the time, and nobody takes my juice boxes anymore. I learned that kids deserve to be treated nice, and that good daddies fight for their children. When I grow up, I want to protect kids like my daddy protected me. Reading Tyler's words brought tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming pride in his resilience and emotional growth. This child had endured months of systematic psychological abuse, but had emerged with his capacity for trust and love intact. Marcus appeared at our table with his own family, stopping by for their weekly lunch. His children immediately gravitated toward Tyler, planning their next playdate and discussing summer camp activities. Sarah hugged me warmly, as had become her custom whenever we encountered each other. Tyler's doing so well, she observed, watching him interact confidently with her children. 6 months ago, he was withdrawn and anxious. Now look at him organizing group activities and expressing his opinions clearly. The most profound change had been Tyler's relationship with his own emotions. He no longer apologized for having preferences or needs. He asked for help when he needed it, expressed joy without restraint, and had learned to recognize when adults were treating him inappropriately. I've been thinking about something, Tyler said as we finished our lunch. Maybe someday Patricia and Harold will learn how to be nice to kids, and then we could see them again. But only if they promise to be kind. His willingness to consider forgiveness balanced with clear boundaries about acceptable treatment demonstrated emotional maturity that impressed every adult in his life. Tyler had learned that love without respect wasn't really love at all, but he hadn't lost his capacity for hope and second chances. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Tyler carefully placed his baseball diamond drawing in his backpack, alongside several others he'd created over recent weeks. His artwork had evolved from dark, isolated figures to bright, inclusive scenes featuring families and friends engaged in happy activities together. Frank's investigation had revealed additional evidence of Harold and Patricia's manipulation, extending beyond their treatment of Tyler. They had been systematically undermining relationships between Jessica and David for years, coaching the twins to fear and resent their father. Their interference had damaged multiple family relationships and traumatized several children. The important thing to remember, I told Tyler as we walked to our car, is that you are loved, you are valuable, and you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. What happened before wasn't your fault, and it will never happen again. Tyler nodded solemnly, then brightened. And if anyone ever tries to take someone else's juice box, I'll tell them that's not okay. That afternoon, as Tyler played in our backyard with the neighborhood children who had become his close friends, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this place of peace and security. 8 months of documentation, 1 moment of courage, and the support of unexpected allies had transformed our lives completely. The phone rang, and I answered to find Frank on the line with updates about the continuing legal proceedings. Harold had agreed to plead guilty to federal housing discrimination charges, accepting a 5-year probation sentence and permanent prohibition from real estate development. Patricia had made progress in therapy and was requesting supervised visitation with Tyler, pending psychological evaluation and family therapy completion. "What do you think about Patricia's request?" Frank asked. "I think Tyler should make that decision when he's ready, if he's ever ready. Right now, he's focused on building healthy relationships with people who treat him well." Tyler's story had become something of a landmark case in family court circles, demonstrating the importance of systematic documentation in emotional abuse situations and highlighting the need for better protection of children during custody disputes. Several law schools had requested permission to use our case materials in their family law curricula. As evening approached, Tyler and I prepared dinner together in our kitchen, a daily ritual that had become one of his favorite activities. He chattered about his day at school, his weekend plans with Madison, and his excitement about summer baseball season. "Daddy," Tyler said as we set the table, "do you think other kids might need help like I did?" "Some kids probably do need help, buddy. Why do you ask?" "Maybe when I'm older I could help protect kids like you protected me. Marcus says there are jobs where you help families be happier." Tyler's desire to transform his painful experience into a way of helping others demonstrated the kind of resilience and empathy that would serve him well throughout his life. He had learned that surviving difficult experiences could create strength and wisdom that benefits not only ourselves, but the people around us. That night, as I tucked Tyler into his bed, surrounded by drawings of happy families and baseball trophies, he looked up at me with the bright, confident expression that had replaced his earlier anxiety and withdrawal. "Thank you for fighting for me, Daddy. Thank you for being brave enough to let me fight for you, buddy." As Tyler drifted off to sleep, I sat in his doorway reflecting on the profound truth we had both learned over the past 6 months. Children deserve protection. Adults have the responsibility to provide it. And love without respect is just another form of manipulation. Most importantly, we had discovered that courage documentation and strategic action could overcome even systematic emotional abuse when deployed with patience and determination. Tyler's childhood would be different now, filled with adults who valued his thoughts and feelings, friends who included him naturally in their activities, and family members who demonstrated their love through consistent, respectful treatment. The little boy, who had once sat silently while adults discussed his worthiness for basic refreshments, had grown into a confident child who understood his own value and expected appropriate treatment from the people around him. The juice box that started our journey toward justice had taught us both that small moments of cruelty, when properly documented and courageously confronted, could be transformed into powerful catalysts for positive change. Tyler's story would continue, But now it would be a story of healing growth and the profound impact that protective adults can have on a child's life. Have you ever witnessed a child being treated unfairly by adults who should be protecting them? Sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty can reveal the biggest problems in families, and it takes tremendous courage to speak up for children who can't protect themselves. Tyler's story shows us that documentation, patience, and strategic action can create real change in children's lives. If this story resonated with you, please share it with others who might need to hear about the importance of standing up for kids. Like this video if Tyler's journey toward healing touched your heart, and subscribe for more stories about families overcoming difficult situations together. Comments are always welcome. I love hearing your thoughts about how adults can better protect and support the children in their lives. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Tyler's story. And remember that every child deserves to be treated with dignity, respect, and unconditional love.